In today's hyperverbal world, people are rewarded for constant updates, public opinions, and rapid responses. The louder you are, the more visible you become. But visibility isn't the same as power, and constant speech isn't the same as strategy. Machiavelli, the 16th century Florentine thinker best known for The Prince, understood something most people still don't. Silence isn't weakness. When used well, it's a tool of influence, a weapon even. He lived in a world of deadly political maneuvering, where a single wrong word could mean exile or execution. But his advice holds just as much value today. Because while modern slip-ups don't often cost lives, they can still cost opportunities, leverage, and authority. We're taught that openness equals authenticity, that transparency builds trust, and yes, it can. But compulsive communication, the urge to constantly explain yourself, can make you predictable, manipulable, and ordinary. Machiavelli warned, the vulgar crowd is always taken by appearances. Appearances are shaped by speech, but silence protects your reality. The hidden cost of talking too much. Every word you say reveals something, your priorities, your thought process, your values. The more you talk, the more others can predict you. And in strategic environments, negotiations, leadership, even personal relationships, predictability is vulnerability. Talking too much creates three main risks. Commitment traps. Once you say what you plan to do, it's hard to change course without looking inconsistent. But if you remain silent about your intentions, you can pivot freely when needed. Exposing your thinking. The more you explain, the more people understand how your mind works. That gives them tools to counter, manipulate, or outmaneuver you. Loss of mystique. Silence builds distance, and distance breeds respect. The person who constantly explains themselves loses the aura of authority. The one who says less often seems to know more. Consider the loud co-worker who dominates every meeting. Eventually, their voice blends into the background. Compare that to the leader who only speaks when something truly matters. Their words carry more weight, not because they say more, but because they say less. Strategic silence isn't just saying nothing. Machiavellian silence isn't passive. It's not about being quiet because you're unsure. It's about choosing to say nothing, on purpose. There are three distinct forms of strategic silence, each with its own psychological power. 1. Information gathering silence. The less you talk, the more you hear. In a negotiation, the first person to speak usually loses. Why? Because they reveal what they want. They show their cards. The silent person watches, listens, and learns, gathering intelligence without giving any away. In meetings, the quiet person often picks up on team dynamics, hidden agendas, or emotional undercurrents. They understand more because they aren't trying to be understood. Machiavelli said, "The wise man does at once what the fool does finally." The wise observe first and act only when it counts. 2. Authority-building silence. People assume that if you don't speak, it's because you don't need to. That's power. Think of high-level executives. They rarely explain themselves at length. They make brief, decisive statements and let others fill in the gaps. Their authority doesn't come from words. It comes from presence. Silence also creates mystery, and mystery often generates more respect than full exposure. The person who withholds just enough becomes someone others want to understand, rather than someone they assume they've already figured out. 3. Ambiguity preserving silence. Sometimes, not clarifying your stance is the smartest move you can make. If you don't clearly define your position, others project their own assumptions onto you. This allows you to stay flexible, to appeal to multiple audiences, and to preserve deniability. A vague response like, "We're considering several options," can simultaneously calm investors, signal openness to innovation, and avoid commitment to any single plan. It's not deception, it's restraint. Why strategic silence is so rare today? Our culture equates silence with guilt or weakness. When someone doesn't speak up, people ask, what are they hiding? Why aren't they being honest? But in reality, strategic silence is discipline in action. It's the ability to delay gratification, resist validation, and protect your power. You don't need to correct every misconception. You don't need to win every argument. You don't need to post every thought. You just need to know when staying quiet gives you more control than speaking ever could. Not all silence is created equal. Some silence is avoidance. Some is insecurity. But strategic silence, especially when used to build authority, is something entirely different. It's a message that says, I don't need to explain myself to be respected. Machiavelli understood this centuries ago. In The Prince, he wrote, "It is much safer to be feared than loved." But he wasn't just talking about tyranny or brutality. He was talking about power through distance, and silence is what creates that distance. Why authority loves distance. The moment you start explaining every move, every decision, every emotion, you become approachable, familiar, and ordinary. But real authority depends on mystery. The more someone sees you as unpredictable or hard to read, the more they tread carefully around you. Think about it. The CEO who makes a statement and leaves the room is treated differently than the one who lingers to debate it. The mentor who pauses before answering gains more attention than the one who fills every second with advice. The leader who waits before speaking in meetings doesn't just talk, they command. In each case, it's not just what's said, it's how little is said that creates the presence. The psychology behind respectful silence. People don't like gaps in information. So when you leave space, their minds rush to fill it. And more often than not, they fill it with assumptions that work in your favor. If you remain quiet after criticism, people assume you're either unbothered or too important to respond. If you stay silent in negotiation, the other side starts to question themselves. Did we overplay? Did they find our weakness? The brain hates silence because it has no reference point. That's why the person who tolerates silence the longest often holds the most power in any interaction. The high-status paradox: speak less, matter more. In almost every hierarchy, from corporate to social to political, the people at the top speak less, not more. The junior employee gives a long presentation. The executive says one sentence, follow up next week. The insecure partner over-explains every feeling. The secure one simply says, I'll need time to think. Speaking less isn't passive, it's selective. It signals confidence. It tells people, I don't need your approval. I'm already anchored in my position. This is why charisma isn't just about what you say. It's about what you withhold. Strategic silence in leadership and conflict. In leadership, every word has weight. So when you speak constantly, you devalue your voice. But when you stay quiet until it matters, people lean in. This plays out in three major ways. Handling criticism. Don't rush to defend every attack. Let others speak first. Let the emotional wave crash. Then respond with clarity and brevity. The contrast gives you control. Difficult decisions. When you're announcing tough choices, over-explaining makes you seem unsure. Silence or short statements convey strength. People want to follow someone who doesn't sound like they're still negotiating with themselves. Team dynamics. The leader who listens more than they speak fosters respect. Silence signals that you're evaluating, not reacting. That makes people rise to your level instead of dragging you into theirs. Social media, where silence becomes strategy. In a culture of constant content, silence is a form of rebellion and power. You don't need to react to every comment. You don't have to clarify every rumor. You don't owe the world your every thought. The more you speak, the more you dilute your presence. But when you go quiet, when you withdraw your energy from the noise, people start to wonder. And curiosity is the seed of influence. Confidence speaks in absence. We often think confidence is loud, that it's about taking up space, dominating the conversation, making sure you're heard. But true confidence has nothing to prove. It knows that silence can be louder than speech. The confident person listens more than they speak. The confident negotiator lets the other side overtalk. The confident leader gives orders, not explanations. And because they speak so rarely, when they do speak, it lands with weight. There's a reason some people hold power without ever raising their voice. A reason they command respect, even when they reveal almost nothing. It's not magic. It's ambiguity preserving silence. A method Machiavelli understood deeply. In his words, "Since it is difficult to unite them, it is much safer to be feared than loved." But the real message? When unity is impossible, certainty becomes dangerous. In moments of division, silence doesn't just protect, it empowers. Why ambiguity is a superpower? People crave certainty. That's human nature. But from a strategic standpoint, clarity can be a trap. When you define your position too early, you lock yourself into a box. You give others something to react to, resist, or undermine. But when you hold space for multiple interpretations, you become harder to pin down and harder to oppose. Politicians do this all the time. We're exploring solutions that reflect the values of all stakeholders. It means nothing specific, yet says just enough to keep everyone hopeful. Leaders do it too. Our strategy is evolving in line with market changes. No promises, but no contradictions either. And in relationships, I'm thinking things through. A pause, not a lie, not a yes, not a no. That's the beauty of ambiguity. It gives you freedom. Strategic silence isn't lying, it's withholding. Let's be clear, this isn't about manipulation or dishonesty. It's about protecting your mental real estate, about choosing when to open the doors and when to let the world wander. Machiavelli wrote, "The promise given was a necessity of the past. The word broken is a necessity of the present." He wasn't endorsing betrayal. He was acknowledging that life changes, and locking yourself into public declarations too early can make adaptation harder. Modern culture pressures us to be transparent at all times, but overexposure leads to loss of leverage, and more importantly, loss of power. The psychological power of silence. Silence doesn't just protect your strategy, it also triggers deep psychological responses in others. Here's how. 1. Silence creates projection. When you say less, people fill in the gaps. They guess your intentions. They assume your reasoning. They imagine your confidence or your threat. This is especially powerful in conflict or negotiation. You don't have to say, "I disagree." You can just stay silent and let others interpret that silence however they need to. They'll reveal their own fears in the process. 2. Silence changes status dynamics. Whoever talks more usually holds less power. The one who speaks last or speaks least holds the room. This shows up in interviews, meetings, debates, even casual conversation. Silence communicates self-control, and self-control is the hallmark of authority. 3. Silence creates mystique. People are more intrigued by what they don't understand. You don't have to be a genius, you just need to not explain everything. When you hold part of yourself back, people respect you more. They start to ask, what does this person know that I don't? Modern situations, where silence wins. Let's bring it back to daily life. Here's where Machiavellian silence can transform your influence. In arguments, you don't have to respond to every accusation. Silence diffuses emotion faster than counterattack ever will. In decision-making, don't reveal your plans before you understand everyone else's. The longer you listen, the stronger your position becomes. In leadership, explain the why once, then let your actions speak. Silence tells your team, "I trust you to handle this." On social media, you don't owe explanations for every move. Sometimes the strongest message is no message at all. Developing the discipline to stay quiet. Silence isn't easy, especially today. We're conditioned to fill space, to respond fast, to be seen. But that compulsion is exactly why silence is powerful, because it's rare. To train this skill, try. Deliberate pause. Before responding, wait 5 seconds. Listening first. Don't speak until you understand why the other person is speaking. Withholding opinions. Not every thought needs to be said. Save your best for when it matters most. Let others reveal themselves. People will tell you everything if you give them space. Remember, the more you speak, the more others can define you. The less you speak, the more you define them. Final word. The whisper that wins Machiavelli's greatest insight wasn't about deception. It was about restraint. In a world obsessed with sharing, he taught us to observe. In a world rushing to speak, he taught us to wait. Those who master strategic silence don't just sound wise. They become wise because they learn more, waste less, and move with intention. They don't need to dominate a room to influence it. They don't need to announce their plans to win. They simply stop talking and let the noise take care of itself.